In this video, you will learn how to calculate the amount of sunlight hours within the Ecotect environment, setting up a grid for the interior open spaces in the building to do more qualitative analysis of the amount of sunlight hours during a specific day or time period. Within the Ecotect environment, you're not only able to look at shadows and shadow patterns, you're also able to look at the amount of sunlight hours hitting the grid on qualitative spaces within your design project. So really this is just another way that we can work with our design to extrude and work with the relations and heights of our form, and how we can work with creating some interior spaces or courtyards in this case that will have an appropriate amount of sunlight hours penetrating the areas here. So what we are going to do now is we're going to the 3D editor, and I'm just going to my grid settings here, and I'm turning off my grid, and I marked out these two courtyards here, and I go to auto fit grid within selected objects, the XY axis, and I'm just choosing a boundary insert of 500 to don't have any pollution for my average values because of the grid penetrating the rooms or stuff like that. And I'm choosing a specific cell size here at, let's say, 900. Okay, like that. So now that I set up my grid, I can also do this as a 3D grid if I want to. I'm ready to look at how many sunlight hours will hit the individual nodes of this analysis grid. And really, if you press here, you'll see that all of these connections within the grid is really measuring points. And right now they're set to 0. So what I want to do now is I want to go up, calculate, and use the solar axis analysis. Right click and just choose shading, overshadowing, and sunlight hours. Say next for a specified period or current time of day. I'm using this specific period because what I'm interested in here is mainly the summer month, which I can apply here because this is where we will use these outside courtyards within the building. And I'm looking at, because this is an office building, maybe from 9 till 17 at night. So really depending on the use of the building and what you're working with for layouting, choose that setting that are appropriate for your project. Okay, I'm saying next, and I can choose different types of values to look at my result. But what I like to have is the average daily values, because it's more qualitative to say, okay, do we have 2 sunlight hours in this case scenario, or do we have 3? So at Henning Larsen Architect, with this project has been developed, they say that they can make the day longer, and by looking at the average daily values in the summer month, we can use this to compare different kinds of designs and validate that we, by doing extruding this side of the building or whatever, are getting more or less solar access into the building. And that's why sunlight hours is a pretty good way to measure this. So say analysis grid, okay, and just say next, and then perform calculation. I'm not going to do this because it takes a bit of time, but what I did is that in here I saved out the analysis grid as a GRD file that I can just load in again, and now I'm able to visualize my results here. And depending on if I'm in the 3D or in the visualize tab, there's different ways that I can simulate my grid. I can say show grid lines, or turn them off, and say show contour lines. And really a great way as well to control this is that you can really use this here, the data and scale. Now we're looking at the sunlight hours, actually also calculating how exposed the different areas are, how much they're shaded, quite the opposite, how much direct light penetrating, how much diffuse light. So let's keep the sunlight hours, and let's say, okay, let's say when we want to have between 2 and 5 sunlight hours like this. And then we can actually use this as an identifier to get insight on which areas have less than 2 sunlight hours, etc. And again, we can also visualize this within the 3D editor, and we can set up camera views, allows us to visualize it a bit more effectively. One great thing about the 3D editor is that we can go to the top here and we can say show average values, which gives us kind of a measuring point that we can use for comparing different designs. Another thing that we can do is that we can of course turn on the grid nodes to look at the actual values, and we are also able to export the data and put them into an Excel sheet to do comparison of different design changes. So we do that by just going to grid management and manage grid data and say sunlight hours and just say analyze data. Now you get this really nice little report with the different nodes within the different intervals that we specified up here in our settings here. So this is really cool that we can take this out to Excel and we can measure it. Thank you.